Hey guys, it's Danille here with the Ken McElroy Show, and I am here with Ken.
Hello, hello.
Hope everyone is doing great this week. So this week we're going to be discussing Texas and everything that happened in Texas over last week.
Yeah, well, I think it's just disasters or insurance claims or whatever that might be, just in general. Texas seems to be on everybody's radar, so we're getting a lot of DMs about that. But I think it's really about, like, what do you do in crisis, whether it's weather related or whatever.
So let's start with Texas. I think most of our viewers kind of know what happened, but my best friend lives there, and no power, no water. You have apartments there, no power, no water. So it's stressful for both the tenant and the landlord as well.
There's not a lot you can do. That is unfortunate. So we as a company, we had hundreds of units with pipe leaks and breaks, and so we're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of issues because we have thousands of units in Texas. So the thing that we did is we sent a bunch of supplies from Arizona from here, obviously down there, with food and water and toilet paper and all kinds of things. The stores run out of food. They run out of water, and people are melting snow and doing all kinds of things. And the real issue with this kind of issue is that when the pipes actually melt, and everything goes away, that's when you start to see all the issues. So we have issues between the walls, we have issues between the units, we have issues below the ground. There's a lot of stuff going on. So all the contractors kind of are being utilized, and I'm sure the insurance companies are having a heyday. But this, as horrible as this is, I've been through this. We've been through it. I've had hurricanes, I've had tornadoes, I've had big fires. We've had murders and suicides. Unfortunately, we've had floods. This is, as a landlord, as a management company, these are things that you have to prepare for and you have to deal with. And so this is unfortunate for lots of people. It's horrible, but we are.
But as a landlord, you have to be a bit panicked if your tenants don't have water or heat when it's freezing outside.
Sure, of course. It's but there's not a lot you can do. The whole city is on lockdown. So we sent a truck down there, and it waited for 3 hours just for gas.
Well, let's talk about that because MC companies. You guys decided as a company that you were going to send a few semis of food and water down to your residents.
We did. We did this during Hurricane Ike too. Hurricane Ike hit Houston. We bought semis full of food and water and sent it to Houston. So, do we have to? No. Did we spend a lot of money doing it? Yes. But, this is part of being a good landlord. And it's a small thing. They're going through a lot of stuff, these people.
So what advice would you give to the smaller landlords that go through crisis like these? Because I think that every landlord at some point will not go through this exact thing, but they're going to go through something.
Yeah. Well, so as I said, there's lots of, like I had a property in Las Vegas once that we literally had faulty plumbing valves in behind the walls, and they were faulty shower and tub and shower valves. So we had 500 leaks in the walls and so you had to imagine that. Plus, we had all the mold. So we had hundreds of units of mold. So you have those kinds of issues. Plus, you have to fix them. Plus, you have to figure out how all that, how do you resolve all that, because it's a big financial issue. We had a property in Texas that got hit by hurricane and tornado. So I guess there's tornadoes and hurricanes. But then you have floods. And so what happens is you get into these situations with the insurance companies. And the one thing that I think everybody needs to realize is this is when your insurance policy, kind of the rubber hits the road here. Yeah, you got to understand that your insurance policies are by salespeople. So I'm not bashing salespeople, but salespeople are salespeople. the adjuster is who you're dealing with now. And so the adjuster, there's this push-pull about, what's covered, what isn't covered. And usually it boils right down to what's ever in the policy. So it's really important that you have your policies looked at. It's really important that you just realize we had an arson fire actually at one of our properties 2 months ago, where literally the guy lit the drapes in his apartment on fire, and we had 10 or 11 other apartments, catch fire. We had one property that was under construction where the plumber's torch caught it on fire, and it took down 2 fire trucks. So, the fire trucks pulled in, and the fire trucks melted like the front of the. And so you have these things. It's not necessarily good, but there's wind, and then there's flood, and they're different. And then there's fire, and then there's ADA and safety issues, and bringing things back up to code. So this is a big, meaty, complex issue.
So let's go back to insurance policies for a minute, because I think a lot of people listening are probably underinsured. So I know, with my condos, your insurance person, salesperson tries to get you the best rate, and that's because they want your business from another insurance company. But when I evaluated my policies, both of them were underinsured for the replacement costs and also for, the things that were covered. And guys, to add that was only like another $100 a year. So I mean, for just a single family home. So they're really minuscule things, but if you're not looking at your insurance policy, you're going to have that damage or something's going to happen, and you're going to be the one standing there.
Right. So yeah, I mean, you think about it, it's like people get in car wrecks all the time, and then that's when they realize that they don't have this insurance or that insurance, or they start to deal with their deductibles, or even health insurance, kind of the same thing. So the thing that you should do, this disaster should teach everybody that they really need to dig into their policies. They really need to understand what's included and what isn't included. Now, I've learned through trial and error and through mistakes. And we brought somebody in our company. She was here 6 months. She went through every single insurance policy. She said, okay, you're short on coverage here. You've got great coverage here, or even you have too much coverage here, because sometimes that can be another thing where you're paying actually for things that you don't necessarily need. Mm-hmm. So and a lot of times the salespeople are just taking it right off the shelf, but you really figure this out when the adjusters get involved.
Well, the salespeople are always really friendly, like, oh, Danille, like da 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 da. Then when you get to the adjuster, they're like the accountant. They're just like, it's black and it's white. They're not smoozing you. It just is what it is. And if you don't have the coverage, it's not covered.
Right. And then there are some gray areas. We've had situations where we argue with an adjuster. We actually had one property. We took it all the way to the Texas Supreme Court. We actually hired attorneys, and we were literally had a lawsuit against Lloyd's of London for a policy that we had in place. So, there's because they were and then they settled on the courthouse steps because it was a big claim, and we were out of pocket, and they just kind of waited us out. Like, Ross and I think at that time we had $750,000 in legal just to get to that point. But that was our hurricane, tornado, flood, and they were saying the wind was covered, but the water wasn't. And even though we had, in other words, you have flood insurance, you have wind insurance, all those kinds of things. And then the worst part was, there's 2 things that you guys can do right now. One is you really need to make sure that your renters have insurance policies for themselves. A renter's insurance policy will really help you. That's required on all of our people. So in other words, when they're renting an apartment, we make them get renter's insurance. Now, again, you need to make sure that it's good renter's insurance, because what you want is contents coverage, and because renters are going to come to you during this time, and they're going to go, the unit above me flooded, and all my clothes are ruined, and my couches and my furniture and everything. And then they're going to have a lawsuit against the landlord because, they were, because it happened from the pipes below, and they're saying that's not my fault. And, all these things are going to happen. So when you have insurance for at the renter level, then they can tap into that. It does help a lot, but
well, and so I know that you had told me $100,000 policy is your minimum for your tenants. And also you want to be listed on their policy is additionally insured. And what that will do is if they cancel it, they have to let you know. So if they go and get it for a month and then they say, screw this and cancel it, it notifies you. So that way, if you're on the policy, you know it's intact for the time they're there.
In other words, somebody can get something and comply with you and then a month later cancel it and you would never know. So when you're additional insured, you're actually just like getting an email saying, hey, this policy's been canceled on this person. So what you want is you want all the tenants to have policies themselves, and then you want your policy to kick in unless, if something happens beyond that. And things happen, guys. Like we've had all kinds of issues inside. When you have 10,000 tenants, you have stuff going on. And there's floods. They're usually from tubs or clogged toilets or, clogged whatever, but they do flood and they do ruin things and units around them, below them. Same thing with fires, kitchen fires or, people, the barbecue is another big one. And so there's all kinds of things. We had a barbecue at one property where the guy was not supposed to barbecue on the patio, but he did. And then the fire alarms went off, sprinkler systems. So the sprinkler systems flooded the whole building. So you have things that come up, and this is just as bad as it is. We spent thousands and thousands of dollars. I think we spent $10,000 per property so far, just sending food and water to our residents, and that's a short-term thing. We haven't even yet seen the real issues, because once the weather clears up. And then we're going to really find out what's going to happen with these broken pipes, what insurance is going to cover, what they're not going to cover. It's going to get worse.
Yeah, and you always have to plan for something happening. We had a premium member write into us this week, and he was saying that at his Airbnb, somebody OD'd over the weekend.
Yeah.
So those things just they do happen when you're dealing with people. You can have disasters.
You will. In fact, we're talking about having a disaster company come and do a video with us for YouTube so people can learn, because there are a lot of mistakes that you can make. The biggest issue that I learned is documentation. So, what you need to have is you need to have pictures, you need to have videos, you need to have addresses, you need to find witnesses and all those kinds of things, just like you would at a car accident. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of times people, they get hit or whatever, and then they pull off, or, and all of a sudden, if they would have videoed it and videoed the whole thing, and then they would have had actually evidence, that all comes in really handy later. Because the insurance companies, right or wrong, their job is to mitigate the loss.
Right. They're not trying to pay everything.
Well, right. Some are really good, but a lot of them are just, you guys, it's a wrestling match. They come out there, especially with this crisis in Texas. It's no different than a hurricane, let's say in Florida, where all the insurance companies are going to be stressed. There's only so many adjusters and so many, and everybody's going to be calling them at the same time. And so, this is going to be months and months and months and months before, and there's all kinds of issues. There's property issues. There's, unfortunately, some people that have really been affected personally. And then you have the contents, whatever that might be. And so you have all of those things. And so you guys got to be thinking about all of those things. And then at the end of the day, the deductible that you have on that property is really, really important. Not only the coverage, but the deductible. And so those all are considerations. If you don't have reserves or money to fix this stuff, it's going to be a real issue.
Right, and that you should always have reserves. So really quick, you guys, if you enjoy free stuff, I wanted to let you know we have a giveaway happening now. You can win a free iPad that's downloaded with 5 of Ken's best-selling books. And you can get started by going to the website below, and the contest ends at the end of the month. Good luck. So now it's time to get into questions from our premium members.
Of course.
Amy wanted to know, do most insurance policies cover pipe freezing?
So now we're starting to get into more of a legal issue. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that most do. So but not all do. So I think you just, again, a broken pipe is a broken pipe. There's all kinds of reasons broken pipes happen. In this particular case, it's freezing. But broken pipes happen from, we have them all the time. It's just not something you talk a lot about, but sometimes it could be from the construction from 20 years ago, and it could be 10 feet below the middle of the parking lot or underneath a building. It could be electrolysis, which is another issue when you put galvanized pipe into copper, and then you get these pinhole leaks in the copper, and it could happen in the slab below the unit itself. So imagine, having literally water coming up through the slab, underneath carpet and everywhere people live. So generally, yes.
But it depends.
It depends on the policy. Again, this is back to the policy.
You guys need to check your insurance policies. That's your homework for today.
Yeah.
And then Nate has a question, and I'm going to expand on it. He says, what do you do if your tenant loses heat or air in extreme temperatures? And I know we live in Phoenix, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a disaster, but my tenant's air went out in the middle of summer. So is that something where you have to get somebody out right away? If you can't get somebody out right away, what is your obligation to the tenant?
Yeah. So a lot of this is covered in the landlord-tenant laws, and a lot of it is very localized. So the first thing I would do is go there. It's a health and safety issue. So that's actually kind of the issue, So you have what constitutes an emergency and what isn't an emergency. And I will tell you that there are times where tenants come to us and they think everything's an emergency, right? Obviously,
yes, they do.
What's happening in Texas is an emergency. So you do whatever you can, do whatever's reasonable. Everybody's in the same boat here. So, you just got to team up, be more like a community. I know that when Ross and I flew into Houston after Hurricane Ike, all the grocery stores were out of food. They were out of water. There were shelters being set up by the Red Cross and some other things. And the churches kicked in. And this is the time to embrace people. That's why we sent all this stuff from here. I don't even know who's going to get it. We just sent these trucks to our properties. Obviously it's free to the residents. And you got to send blankets and heaters and anything that we could buy. We shoved into those semis and we sent them south to Texas.
Yeah, and you made a good distinction. You have to distinguish between a real emergency and not an emergency, because your tenants are going to think everything is an emergency. But when something truly is, you need to pay what you need to pay to get somebody out there to fix it.
Right. And that's actually one of the other issues, though, are the contractors are all busy. So you imagine you get... Well, one contractor is probably, how many contractors are there in Austin, Texas, as an example? A lot, but certainly not enough to deal with this.
For everything's going out at the same time.
Right.
Yeah. And then we have another question. This is our YouTube question of the week. Ayoka wanted to know, how does it help a landlord for tenants to have renter's insurance?
Well, think about your deductible. So for us, my deductible is $50,000. So, and by the way, it used to be $5,000. Mm-hmm. So let's just go back to those days. So back in the day, I used to have a $5,000 deductible on my properties. When you have a low deductible, that means your premiums are
higher.
Yeah, they're going to be higher. So if you have a higher deductible, then your premiums go down a little bit. So there's this fine balance. So think of it as self-insurance. So you're trying to self-insure that first piece. When you turn stuff over to an insurance company, then all of a sudden it starts the process. So if you turn over, when we were at a $5,000 deductible and we had, let's say, a $5,000 kitchen fire, your insurance is going to go up.
Right.
So do you turn that over or do you not turn that over?
Right.
So what we decided to do was have the tenants get the renter's insurance policy for those kinds of things. In other words, for their contents and for little issues that they might have had, so that they can use their own insurance to take care of those kinds of things that might fall below that insurance policy deductible.
And then that's on them and not on you.
Right. And so what you're trying to do is have them have insurance for anything that might have happened inside of their unit that they either caused or created. And what you want to try to do is you don't want to have to turn over a lot of these little claims, because there's all kinds of little claims that you have. There's slip and falls, and there's all the kinds of things. We had a woman that slipped on an icy sidewalk and broke her her elbow. And so, those are the kinds of things that we deal with. And so we always have a number of claims. And so those are the ones that you want to just take care of that. And you don't want to report to the insurance company. You just want to have kind of that extra money. On something like this, it's much bigger. Obviously, it gets lots of attention.
It's worth the claim.
Yeah. Because then all of a sudden, like we had a hailstorm in Oklahoma City. It broke 40% of the windows in a 350 unit building. So 40% of the windows. So it punctured the roofs, dented the siding, and broke windows. Okay, so we had to board up all the windows, if you can imagine that, on this big project. So like 40 acres, and that's a big claim.
Well, and what you don't want to deal with is your tenant calling you at 7 a.m. saying that their $400 couch is ruined, and you need to reimburse them.
And you get those calls. Those are real calls.
Those are real calls.
Those are and that's that's happening right now, guaranteed in Texas. If you have a really nice tricked out apartment and you've got a flat screen on the wall, and there's a flood from the unit above you, who do you go to?
You're going to go to your landlord.
Right. You go to your landlord, you go to your property manager. So those are calls that are happening right now.
But then it's nice as a landlord to say, "Oh, just call your insurance company."
Right. Well, right. So that's it's just an extra level of protection
and liability too. If they have a dog and the dog bites someone and all that, like that all runs through their renter's insurance.
Happen. Those things happen.
And so it's less hassle for you. It doesn't cost you anything. It costs your tenants about $12 a month, so it's not very expensive for them either. And most of them will be used to it as well.
It's just good policy to have.
Yep. And so I think that's about it for today, Ken. I think everyone's learned a little bit on how to deal with disasters, because they will happen. I think the lesson today is just to not be lazy and cheap, and to actually check your insurance policy, make sure your tenants have their renter's insurance, and kind of just go from there.
Yeah, and document, and then make sure that you have your insurance policy reviewed. And that's really the lesson here. Take a look at your insurance policy. Take a look. Do you have renter's loss? In other words, what that means is, let's say you have a fire in a unit and you lose your renter. Well, the insurance company may or may not cover that loss, and it might take a year to get that unit fixed. I'm telling you, I have a property in Texas where it took about 10 months after the fire department and the building department and everybody came through and approved everything that we had to do. Putting it back together was the easy part. Well, then you start to battle with the insurance company over, well, that unit was leased. So if it's leased at $1,000 a month for 10 months, that's $10,000. So that's called loss of rents coverage. So there's all these coverages that you need to make sure that you have in the event of any kind of disaster, no matter what it is. And trust me, the salespeople don't always know what they're selling you, and you want to take it to that next step. So when you do, and you are faced with that conversation with your adjuster, that you know exactly what you're talking about and you have the proper coverages.
Yep, and your replacement coverage is that in case you had a total loss as well.
That's right.
Awesome, guys. Well, we will see you next Monday. Okay. And remember, if you want to ask us questions, just sign up through Premium, kenmcelroy.com/premium.
Yep. See you guys.
See ya.